Ferrari has a serious straight-line speed problem, and Fred Vasseur just admitted it on the record by confirming the team knows they have a deficit of performance in the straight line that they simply have to work on because it is like it is. That admission came without a specific number attached to it, yet paddock estimates now suggest the SF26 is bleeding roughly 30 horsepower against Mercedes specifically, a gap that Lewis Hamilton has publicly attributed to rivals having more deployment and less derating at the end of the straights. But here is the tension that nobody at Maranello wants to talk about openly. This entire deficit might not be a simple development failure or a manufacturing defect, but rather the direct result of a deliberate strategic bet made during the design phase that has now completely backfired due to a regulatory change nobody saw coming. Why would Ferrari intentionally build an engine component that sacrifices top speed, and what exactly changed in the rules to turn that calculated advantage into their biggest 2026 liability? The answer lies in a turbocharger sizing decision that was supposed to give Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton a decisive edge off the start line. Ferrari originally selected a smaller turbo for the 2026 power unit specifically to reduce throttle lag during standing starts, prioritizing launch performance over peak straight-line velocity based on how races had been won in previous years. It was a logical engineering trade-off at the time. Then the FIA introduced a new 5-second pre-start procedure that fundamentally altered standing start dynamics, instantly eliminating the benefit that smaller turbo was designed to deliver while leaving the straight-line performance penalty fully intact. The car launched fine. It just could not pull away once it got going. Engineers knew it, drivers felt it, the data confirmed it. Now Ferrari is scrambling to reverse a design philosophy that was correct 12 months ago but is wrong today, all while competing against Mercedes, who never made that same gamble. So where does that leave the championship fight right now? The recovery plan is already in motion through a two-phase program called ADUO, with the first phase deployed ahead of the Austrian Grand Prix, combining software changes and a newly developed shell fuel compound to claw back an estimated 7 to 8 horsepower. But that is barely a quarter of the reported 30 horsepower gap, which means everything now hinges on ADUO 2, a completely redesigned turbocharger featuring new blade angles, revised blade count, and materials built to handle higher combustion temperatures that is expected to debut at Monza. Will it actually deliver the combined 30 horsepower gain Ferrari is targeting? Or will the Temple of Speed expose yet another miscalculation in a season where every straight-line tenth matters more than ever before? That 30 horsepower figure circulating through the paddock remains an estimate rather than an official Ferrari admission, which creates a strange dynamic where everyone knows the gap exists, but nobody can pin down its exact dimensions with telemetry data. Fred Vasseur confirmed the deficit exists on record without ever attaching a number to it, stating only that they know they have a deficit of performance in the straight line and have to work on it, adding simply that it is like it is. Is that public stoicism genuine confidence in the ADUO 2 fix, or is it damage control designed to prevent rivals from knowing exactly how deep the hole really is? The ambiguity itself becomes a strategic weapon, because Mercedes and Red Bull are forced to guess whether Ferrari's recovery timeline matches their own development cycles or falls dangerously behind. Lewis Hamilton provided the most concrete driver feedback on this issue when he noted that Mercedes takes a huge step on the straights specifically because they have a little bit more deployment and less derating at the end of the straights. That distinction matters enormously in 2026 because the new power units produce roughly equal output from combustion and electric systems, meaning raw horsepower tells only half the story, while energy management dictates the other half. A car can match peak dyno numbers yet still lose 0.3 per straight if its battery empties 200 meters earlier than the competition. Energy bleeds out, lap times suffer, overtakes vanish. This is why Hamilton's observation about derating is actually more diagnostic than any single horsepower estimate, because it points directly to the efficiency gap that Ferrari must close alongside the raw output deficit. Scuderia fans. Com has tracked this storyline with granular technical detail throughout the season, treating the straight-line deficit not as a temporary blip, but as a defining characteristic of the SF26 package that intersects with every circuit-specific performance projection. Their reporting consistently frames the 30 horsepower estimate against Mercedes as the benchmark gap, while acknowledging that the actual deficit may fluctuate track to track depending on altitude, temperature, and fuel load variables. So what we are really discussing is a moving target rather than a fixed number, one that shifts based on how aggressively Ferrari can deploy their electrical energy before hitting the derating cliff that Hamilton described. The chassis compensates partially, corners buy time, straights erase it. That trade-off defines every qualifying session and race strategy meeting at Maranello right now. Because the SF26 genuinely possesses one of the strongest mechanical platforms on the grid, even as its power unit holds it back in ways that no amount of cornering excellence can fully mask. This brings us back to why Vasseur's phrasing matters so much. By saying "it is like it is," he signaled that the team has accepted the current reality without panic, suggesting internal confidence that the ADUO program will eventually deliver the goods, even if the interim period requires patience. But patience costs points, and points cost championships, which means Ferrari is essentially betting their 2026 title hopes on a redesigned turbocharger arriving at Monza with enough proven reliability to run flat out from the moment it leaves the garage. Picture this for a second. You spend 18 months perfecting an engine component for one specific rule set. The smaller turbo was designed to eliminate throttle lag. Standing starts were the primary performance target during development. Then the FIA introduces a 5-second pre-start procedure. That regulatory change fundamentally alters launch dynamics overnight. Your carefully engineered advantage disappears before the first race. The straight-line speed penalty remains permanently embedded in the hardware. Motor Biscuit characterizes this as a strategic bet that backfired. No Ferrari official has ever confirmed that specific framing publicly. Multiple technical outlets have verified the underlying causal chain though. The new procedure made reduced lag irrelevant at the start. Airflow restrictions at full throttle became the dominant factor. Engineers inherited a component optimized for obsolete conditions. Development resources shifted from optimization to damage limitation. New blade angles were required for the ADUO2 redesign. Revised blade counts address the original sizing miscalculation. Advanced materials handle combustion temperatures the old turbo could not sustain. Thermal management became the critical engineering constraint. Reliability concerns complicate the Monza debut timeline significantly. An engine penalty there would devastate championship hopes. The combined 30 horsepower target depends on this redesign succeeding. Whether it delivers remains unproven until cars hit the track. Every simulation suggests progress but cannot guarantee results. Real-world validation is the only metric that matters now. The ADUO recovery program represents Ferrari's most critical technical response to the straight-line deficit, structured as two distinct sequential upgrades rather than a single silver bullet solution. ADUO 1 arrived ahead of the Austrian Grand Prix paired with a newly developed shell fuel compound, delivering an estimated 7 to 8 horsepower gain that provided immediate but incomplete relief. That initial phase addressed combustion efficiency and energy deployment mapping without touching the fundamental hardware limitation caused by the original turbocharger sizing decision. Chemistry helped, software adapted, hardware waited. The remaining 22 horsepower gap could only be closed through physical component replacement, which is exactly what ADUO2 was designed to accomplish through its completely redesigned turbocharger architecture. This second phase targets a combined 30 horsepower gain when added to the ADUO1 improvements, meaning the new turbo must independently generate roughly 22 additional horsepower beyond what the Austrian upgrade achieved. The redesigned unit features new blade angles optimized for the 2026 power unit's specific airflow requirements, a revised blade count that balances spool-up characteristics against peak flow capacity, and advanced materials engineered to withstand higher combustion temperatures that the original smaller turbo simply could not handle safely. Monza was always the intended debut venue for this upgrade because the Temple of Speed serves as both the calendar's most power-sensitive circuit and the ultimate validation test for any straight-line performance improvement. Timing is everything here. Deploying ADUO2 at a track where top speed matters more than anywhere else maximizes its championship impact if it works, but also maximizes exposure if reliability issues emerge during practice or qualifying. What makes this timeline particularly uncertain is that neither the exact Monza debut date nor the final confirmed power gain has been verified on track as of this reporting window. Both remain expected targets rather than delivered results, which means Ferrari is essentially committing to a high-stakes engineering milestone based on simulation data and dyno testing alone. Will the new turbo survive the thermal loads of full race running at Monza without triggering penalties or performance degradation? Can the 30 horsepower combined target actually be realized in real-world conditions where fuel load, ambient temperature, and tire management all interact with power unit output in ways that bench testing cannot fully replicate? These questions will only be answered when the SF26 hits the main straight at Monza with the ADUO turbo spinning at full boost for the first time in competition. Until then, every horsepower projection remains theoretical, and every championship calculation built around this upgrade carries inherent risk that no amount of factory preparation can eliminate. Remember how this all started, with Ferrari having a serious straight-line speed problem and Fred Vasseur admitting the deficit exists but refusing to quantify it. That opening uncertainty about the exact size of the power gap now echoes in a completely different arena, because Lewis Hamilton revealed that Ferrari's driver-in-loop simulator sent him in the wrong direction during the Miami Grand Prix setup process. The tool produced a car configuration with poor corner entry responsiveness and massive mid-corner understeer that he would never have chosen based on his own feel and experience. He stated plainly that the simulator really sends him the wrong direction, leading him to cut that preparation method out entirely for subsequent race weekends. Too many risks. Those three words carry enormous weight when spoken by a 7-time world champion who has spent decades refining his setup methodology across multiple regulation changes and teams. Hamilton skipped simulator preparation before the Canadian Grand Prix after the Miami experience and described his Shanghai weekend, where he also had limited or no simulator work, as ultra encouraging compared to previous events where he relied on the tool heavily. Suzuka, by contrast, was a weekend where he felt on the back foot, suggesting the correlation between simulator avoidance and improved car feel is not perfectly linear, but still significant enough to justify abandoning the tool altogether. Ahead of Monaco, he confirmed he was unlikely to return to using the simulator at all, cementing what began as a reactive decision into a deliberate long-term strategy for extracting maximum performance from the SF26. Trust broke down, data misled, instinct returned. This creates a fascinating parallel to the hardware story, because just as Ferrari must rebuild confidence in their power unit through ADUO upgrades, Hamilton had to rebuild confidence in his own preparation process by rejecting a tool that was supposed to accelerate development rather than hinder it. Whether this simulator abandonment ultimately helps or hurts Ferrari's championship push depends entirely on whether trackside feedback can compensate for lost virtual testing mileage across the remaining 2026 calendar.